In Italy, Carnevale is a season of masks, confetti, and most dangerous lady pride dough. Long before it was an Instagram aesthetic, it was a practical and spiritual hinge in the year, the last exuberant use of fat eggs and sugar before kitchens turned toward the leaner days of Lent. The very word Carnevale is often traced to the Latin phrase carne lavare, remove meat or farewell to meat, a reminder that once the streamers were swept up, meat and other rich foods would be set aside in favor of fasting and abstinence. Carnival sweets sit right at that edge. They're not subtle. They're crisp, shattering, sugar-dusted, and unapologetically rich. Two of the most beloved are Chiacchiere, paper-thin ribbons of fried dough, and Castagnole, plump little dough balls that can be fried or baked and rolled in sugar. These are the sweet sins of the season, not evil in themselves, but intentionally indulgent.
In many parts of Europe, per-Lent, days were historically about emptying the pantry of anything that would be forbidden or scarce during the fast: meat, butter, lard, eggs, and sometimes even dairy more broadly. Italians took that logic and ran with it. As meat and rich dishes were about to disappear from daily meals, families turned those same restricted ingredients into desserts, stretching flour with eggs and fat, then frying and sugaring them into something that felt extravagant before the season of abstinence began. The phrase Carnevale captures that transition. For weeks, communities threw themselves into feasting, parades, and sweets. Then, almost overnight, the tone shifted. Tables that had been covered in fried pastries and roasts would host pots of legumes, vegetables, and simpler breads. This rhythm richness, then restraint, echoes through other faith traditions too. Just as Lent leads Christians through a period of fasting toward the joy of Easter, Muslims pass through Ramadan's daily hunger to reach the sweetness of Eid, when special desserts and festive meals mark the return to feasting. In each case, sweetness tastes different after you've known what it is to go without.
Chiacchiere go by many regional names: cenci, frappi, buggy, crostoli, but the experience is the same. A fragile, bubbled strip of dough that shatters under a veil of powdered sugar. They are light in texture, but built from ingredients that once would have been precious and temporarily off limits in the weeks ahead. First, make the dough. In a bowl, combine 2 cups of flour, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and a half teaspoon of salt. In another bowl, whisk 2 large eggs, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, the zest of 1 lemon, and about 2 to 3 tablespoons of white wine. Pour the wet ingredients into the dry and mix until a smooth, firm dough forms. Knead it briefly. Then wrap and let it rest for 30 minutes. Next, roll and cut. Divide the dough and roll each piece as thin as you can, about 1 to 2 millimeters. The thinner the dough, the more delicate your chiacchiere will be. Cut the dough into strips. Now, fry them. Heat neutral oil to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Fry a few pieces at a time until they're puffed and lightly golden. Remove them and let them drain on paper towels. Finally, while they're still warm, dust generously with powdered sugar. They're best the day they're made. If chiacchiere are crisp and lacy, Castagnole are their softer, cuddlier cousins. First, make the dough. 1½ teaspoons of baking powder and a pinch of salt. In another bowl, whisk 2 large eggs with 3 tablespoons of softened butter and the zest of 1 lemon. Next, shape the dough by pinching off small pieces and rolling them into balls the size of small chestnuts. Drain them on paper towels and immediately roll in granulated sugar. For a lighter option, you can bake them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 15 minutes. There is a reason these desserts feel a little bit mischievous in the context of Lent. They are engineered to be everything Lent is not. Where Lent calls for simplicity, they are elaborate. Where Lent leans on beans and bread, they lean on frying oil and sugar. But the story doesn't end there. Across traditions, you see the same pattern. A swing between feasting and fasting, with sweetness on both sides of restraint. Christians move from Carnevale's Chiacchiere and Castagnole into Lent's soups and simple breads, and eventually to Easter's celebratory cakes and breads. Muslims step from ordinary time into Ramadan, setting aside daytime food and drink. Then gather each evening for iftar and finish the month with Eid al-Fitr, when special sweets and festive dishes return in force. Jewish communities strip leaven from their homes for Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, then celebrate liberation with symbolic foods that themselves carry sweetness. In other words, Chiacchiere and Castagnole are not just sweet scenes, they're signposts. They sit at the boundary between seasons and ask us to notice what changes when we choose to put the oil away for a while. When the fast is over, whether it ends in Easter, Eid, or the closing of Passover, sweetness comes back. But we taste it differently because our appetites and our attention have been retrained.